Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
As the debate on the budget resumed in the Commons, Labour claimed the reductions announced for disability benefits represented a new low for the government. The Chancellor, George Osborne, is facing calls from opposition parties and some Tory backbenchers to reverse a planned £1.3 billion cut to payments that help people with day-to-day living, such as extra transport costs. The Shadow Chancellor made an appeal to MPs.
Can I just say this across the House? I just say this across the House. This is a very important issue. We will not make party politics of this. If we can I say this sincerely as someone who's campaigned on disability issues in this House for 18 years. I urge all members now to press the Chancellor to think again on this issue. It is cruel and it is unfortunately, I believe, dangerous for the well-being of disabled people.
Does he not agree with me that if the Chancellor's not going to listen to us on this side about these draconian cuts to people who are receiving such benefits, perhaps he'll listen to Graham Ellis, the chair of the Conservative Disability Group, who is now, as a result of these pernicious cuts, is cutting all links with the Conservative Party?
In the 6 years that he's been in charge of the nation's finances, the Chancellor has missed every major target he's set himself. He said he'd balance the books by 2015, but a deficit this year is set to be over £72 billion. He said that Britain would pay its way in the world before he's overseen the biggest current account deficit since modern records began.
I want to help the Labour Party in every way I can. And I want them to be credible in the next election. But the Shadow Chancellor took the airwaves this morning and talked about borrowing more money. Can he give an absolute commitment that if he was to become Chancellor, he would not borrow more money than the present Chancellor? Just say yes, that's fine.
The present Chancellor has just borrowed, since his arrival, £200 billion extra than what he promised. Let us make it absolutely clear. Like any company, UK PLC under us, we will invest. Just like a company, we'll invest in the plant and machinery to create the growth which can afford our public services.
The Shadow Chancellor proved today that he is incapable of answering any of the questions put to him by my colleagues on this side. But he is able to tell us a few things. He's told us that he wants to transform capitalism. He's told us that his heroes are Lenin and Trotsky. He's told us that he wants to borrow more. In fact, had we carried on with the Labour Party's plans when they were in government from 2010, we would have borrowed £930 billion more in the course of the past 6 years.
The Education Secretary brought the focus of the debate round to schools.
For those who are saying that we aren't addressing the critical issues, they couldn't be further off the mark, because our white paper published today is a vision for raising standards in teaching and raise them higher than any government has before. Teachers will be better qualified and accredited, I will in a minute. They will have access to the best development opportunities and they will command more respect than any generation of teachers before them, taking their rightful place among the great professions. Let me give way to the lady.
I thank the Secretary of State very much for giving way. Didn't we go through years and years under Labour where our standards fell so low? We did our children absolutely no favours, and I applaud this white paper.
While most of us will agree the extension of the school day is most welcome, there will be children at school who are hungry, and therefore find it most difficult to benefit from any reforms that any of us may talk of. While one welcomes the Chancellor's sugar tax, which will give more children the abilities to start their school with food in their bellies, might she break convention and lead a cross-party group to her colleague sitting next to her so that we can actually lobby for some of that sugar tax to feed the poorest children during the school holiday?
Well, can I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman, very much indeed. I or my right honourable friend would be very happy to meet with him to discuss this. One of the announcements that hasn't got the attention from yesterday, but I will come on to talk a little bit, is the funding, the additional funding, significant additional funding for breakfast clubs. And of course we have as a government also committed to continuing the pupil premium, which is another way in which schools are able to use that money to support those children most at disadvantage.
So recent written answer to my honourable friend for Sheffield Heeley showed that 100% of the Treasury's senior civil servants are based in Whitehall, with 60% of these civil servants being men. Apparently, the Chancellor really does think that the man on Whitehall knows best, and he has a lot of men on Whitehall making the decisions in this budget. Is that why they've failed to come up with a solution to the tampon tax?
Well, let me just say to the Honourable Lady that I had the pleasure of working in the Treasury with my right friend, the Chancellor, in the last Parliament. You couldn't find somebody who was more supportive of promoting women and supporting women's causes. Let's deal with the issue of the tampon tax. We hope very much that we are going to make progress with the EU in relation to the VAT rate.
I think when we try and give people educations, we ought to do it in a way that's easy to digest and to remember when people leave. And I tend to think if I can't explain it to my 7-year-old son, then I'm probably overcomplicating it, and I think that's the way I'm going to pitch it to my friends across the House today. Because it's no more complicated than this. That Georgie Porger spun a lie. He kicked the poor and made them cry. And when the rich came out to play, Georgie delivered a tax giveaway. It's really no more complicated than that. Taking money from the poorest, giving it to the richest.
I must also stress, moving on, my support for the sugar tax on soft drinks, which is also bold, I believe. It is a move that sends a message will educate and encourage both consumers and parents and children, and the drinks industry. Given the 2 tiers, it will also encourage the drinks industry to try and cut down their sugars to move into the 2nd tier. My own grandmother died when my father was very young of diabetes. She had a complete and utter addiction to soft drinks. Now, although that was a different era and we can't be 100% sure that it was the cause of diabetes, it is extremely likely it was. My family grew up in a household that was a very small, modest income, and I often think if we'd have had that tax then, what a difference it might have made.
The latest debate over the budget.